Welcome to today's Explainer. You know that feeling when global development models just don't quite click with local realities? Yeah, we've all been there. Today, we're unpacking something pretty massive. We're deconstructing Abdi Fattah Osman Hussein's multi-volume blueprint for redesigning African institutions from the ground up, all by the year 2030. We are absolutely talking about a radical, systems-level overhaul today, so let's get into it. So let's start right off the bat with this really powerful thesis. Hussein argues that the real deficit facing the continent actually isn't physical capital. It's not a lack of technology, and it's certainly not a lack of intelligence. It is what he brilliantly calls an audit deficit of the mind. In simple terms, it means operating on borrowed logic. It's about importing foreign curricula and administrative frameworks that simply don't fit the local environment. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to breeze through the accidental system crisis, dig into the philosophical heart of it all, look at the muscle of applied sovereignty, check out the engine providing real institutional proof, and finally, cast our eyes toward that 2030 horizon. All right, starting with part one, the accidental system crisis, which includes dealing with inherited frameworks and what's called the CV trap. Think about this for a second. What actually happens when you try to run modern governance and classrooms on administrative hardware that was designed for a totally different era with fundamentally opposing goals? Hussein calls these accidental systems. It's essentially when a system functions without a local design mandate. Imagine trying to run a 21st century sovereign nation using a 19th century colonial operating system. Sure, the physical buildings might be updated, but the underlying logic? It's completely misaligned. And the antidote to those accidental systems is epistemic sovereignty. Now, I know that sounds like heavy academic jargon, but it's really not. It's about having the fundamental right and the actual operational capability to architect your own future. It means stepping away from being passive consumers of imported models and stepping up as the active, conscious builders of your own reality. Which brings us to a huge pivot. African professionals have got to break out of the CV trap. You know, that exhausting grind where success is basically measured by how well you can polish your resume for some foreign algorithm. Yeah, we need to ditch that. Instead, it's time to embrace the design mandate. It's not about how impressive your CV looks to an overseas recruiter. It's about whether you can actively solve local systemic friction and architect real sovereign solutions for your own community. Moving right along to section two, the heart. This is all about the philosophical foundation and essentially debugging the African BIOS. This brings us to what we call the hardware-software fallacy. You simply can't just parachute in some smart classrooms or drop the latest tech into a system if the cultural software running them is still glitched by historical trauma. Hussein makes this incredible point that culture is actually the primary infrastructure. Narrative, storytelling, history, these are the strategic user interfaces required to debug the mind. Because if your cultural operating system is misaligned, even the most advanced hardware on the planet just becomes a really expensive paperweight. So who actually fixes this? Well, to solve this kind of complex friction, we need a totally new kind of professional, the systems thinker, or the augmented professional. This is someone who completely shatters that old, artificial divide between code and community. They can merge genuine human empathy with hard data, like supply chain analytics or AI. They literally speak both the language of the algorithm and the language of the ancestors. It totally rejects the myth of the siloed specialist, because you need a multidisciplinary approach to rebuild an entire infrastructure. Okay, let's get into section three, the muscle. We're shifting gears from philosophy to applied sovereignty and tactical manuals. Philosophy is great, right? But now we need the actual tactical tools. We're talking about a real tactical arsenal here, specifically engineered to replace imported Western textbooks. It's real applied machinery. We're overhauling teaching environments, applying intense data science in high-friction areas like correctional facilities, and equipping leaders with the contractual logic they actually need to negotiate public-private partnerships without, accidentally giving away the farm. Take education, for instance. The Integrated Digital Pedagogy, or IDP framework, totally flips the script on how we view technology. Instead of fearing AI as this looming threat or a replacement for teachers, it treats AI as a cognitive apprentice. Think of it as this incredibly powerful tool that amplifies your own human creativity and critical thinking, as long as it's being guided by strong ethical leadership and local values. And the contrast between these two concepts is absolutely crucial. If institutions don't step up and design their own digital frameworks, they run headfirst into algorithmic colonialism. That's where you're just a consumer of platforms that are hosted and controlled somewhere else entirely. True digital sovereignty means deploying localized data science. You have to write that ethical code yourself and ensure that your data stays within your own borders to protect national autonomy. Let's move to Section 4, the engine. This is where we get into the institutional laboratory and real-time proof. Because theory is just a ghost until it has a body, right? So let's look at a live operational case study right in Nairobi, the campus model. It's fascinating how these three specialized entities work in total synchronicity. First, you've got finance, acting as the economic anchor to move away from extractive debt. Then AI systems acts as the technical core to train those augmented professionals we talked about earlier. And finally, consulting takes all of these strategies and deploys them directly into state ministries. It's just a brilliantly integrated, self-sustaining ecosystem. And what actually makes this engine hum is what's called the conversion loop. It's a literal step-by-step mechanism showing exactly how intellectual property transforms into a certified, market-ready workforce from the bottom up. Someone engages with the theory, they take a specialized course linked directly to that knowledge, and boom, they emerge as a certified professional ready to create actual economic impact. It bridges that skills gap in real time. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the 2030 horizon, where we talk about scaling this sovereign standard. We're looking at a pretty aggressive four-phase scaling strategy here. The end goal, completely dismantling the development illusion by 2030. They're starting by consolidating core frameworks in 2026, moving into deep partnerships with state agencies by 2027, scaling the culture across digital media in 28 and 29, and finally establishing a true Pan-African standard by 2030. And this momentum is vital right now, especially as the African Continental Free Trade Area demands a newly skilled, highly resilient workforce. I absolutely love this quote from the blueprint. We are no longer waiting for a seat at the table of global knowledge. We are building the table. Man, that is powerful. It's Hussein's solemn commission to educators, technologists, policymakers, everyone. It's a demand to stop adapting to broken, inherited systems and start building independent ones from scratch. It's an open invitation to become the architect of your own knowledge ecosystem.
So, I want to leave you with this to chew on as we wrap up. Will you simply adopt to inherited systems, or will you step up and design the future? As you head back to your day, take a hard look at the invisible architecture of your own institutions, your offices, your classrooms. Are you operating on borrowed logic, or are you ready to embrace the design mandate? Thanks so much for exploring this blueprint with me today. Keep questioning those systems and keep learning.